Dante. I got a nose like a pickle and I tickle your rear.
You there?
I'm in.
Okay, cool. So I was wondering, so what actually got you into acting? What do you think was the first thing that really triggered you to make you want to act?
I saw a movie when I was a kid with Stephen Boyd called The Oscar. And Stephen Boyd was also in Ben-Hur. He was the guy that was the bad guy driving the chariot when Ben-Hur was racing him in the chariot race. British actor, I think it's British, maybe Australian, but Stephen Boyd. And he started out like as a kind of a nobody and just a, you know, I don't even think he was an actor. And somehow he got involved. And then he became an actor. And then he rose to the point where he was nominated for an Oscar. And his character's name was Frank something. And one of the last scenes in the film is he's at the Oscars. And they say, and the Oscar for Best Actor is Frank. And he gets up and it says, Sinatra. And I thought to myself, you know what? I see myself in this world. However, I don't see myself in the world with the kind of desires that a lot of people have. I mean, I don't think I'm a person that has typical ambition or typical drive. I have aspirations and I have things I want to do, but I'm not driven by ambition, competition, or any of that stuff. Yeah. I'm driven by just the enjoyment of what I'm doing, you know? And I was lucky enough to get a job when I was 17. I was a senior in high school when everybody was, you know, going to the prom and going to the picnic and going to the graduation. And I didn't experience any of that because by April of that year that I graduated from high school in June, I was starting a job where I was working 6 nights a week in a play, you know, Tuesday through Sunday. And so when they were going to the prom, I didn't go to the prom. I didn't even have a prom date at the time. Or I didn't have a girlfriend, you know, at the time. So I missed all of that sort of senior high school stuff. But what it did do for me, though, it made me realize that I was doing what I wanted to do. I was doing what I dreamed about doing. And I just had to be disciplined and keep working at it, you know, and hopefully something good would happen by it.
Awesome. You know, while everyone else is running around chasing something else and chasing kind of, I guess you could say, empty dreams, and you were looking into, you know, a well of wealth, of, you know, I just mean culturally, not that it was just a financial thing. It was something that you were looking into to enrich your life.
Oh, absolutely, man. Because my first, you know, several years of working as an actor, I wasn't making any money, you know. I either had to have another job or just be broke. And, but I kept hanging in there. And I would get these jobs that would give me enough money to just survive. And then they increased. I think it was like when I went to City College in San Francisco. Yeah. And I did a couple of plays there. One called River Niger by Joseph A. Walker. And another one called In the Wine Time by the great Ed Bullins.
Awesome.
So during those 2 plays, in a sense, exposed me just to a little bit larger audience of academics mostly, but to a lot of older actors who would come by and they would see the show, and older technicians and people like that worked there. And they said, you know, out of all the guys we've seen come through here in a long time, you show a lot of promise. And I was getting predictions like, in the next 3 years, you're going to be a major talent in the film and television industry. And that was 1973, 74, 75, those years. And I didn't get my
probably because you're seeing all the other kids are just, you know, doing it as a cool factor, and they could probably see that they didn't have that sort of drive and depth.
You know, and I didn't have a kind of a fanatical drive in depth, but what I had was I realized early on, like maybe the first or second time I was on stage, I realized that there was that thing that happens. I mean, I've heard stand-up comics talk about it, but as an actor, there's a thing that happens where there's a split second where time stops.
Yeah.
And you're in a space of quiet, of calm, of well-being. And then the next moment comes and you go and do what you have to do or say what you have to say or do the action you have to do. But in that moment, that one moment, it's like time stops in your world. And you're standing in the middle of a place that time does not exist. And that is like almost like a photograph for me of the time I realized that, yep, this is it. This is it. And this was even before I went to City College, San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
I was still in high school.
What were you studying at what were you studying at City College? It's City College San Francisco, right?
Yep. I was studying a few different things. That's where I first met Glenn Nance. I think he's Dr. Nance now. He was an African American studies teacher.
Awesome.
And I took his class, and it was in that class that it was an African history class. And I think it was 3 of them. And like 3 semesters worth of class. Then while in the class, Mr. Nance asked me, he said he wanted to start a political organization on campus.
Really?
And I remember him taking me outside for a long walk. And he said, you know, I want to start this organization, but I can't really do it. I would like to start a political organization on campus, and I would like for you to run it.
Wow.
And I thought, And, you know, I was doing stuff like, at the time, the Attica revolt had happened in Attica prison, where like something like 60 people were killed by the National Guard and the guards. I worked on the Free Attica Brothers Defense Committee. I, in fact, brought the film, the film Attica. I brought that documentary film to City College.
Oh, really? That's pretty deep. How'd you?
Yeah, because I'd met a woman.
How'd you get that
film?
Sorry.
Yeah, you asked me how did I get the film out there? Well, at the time I was also working at a radio station, KELW Radio, which was a early NPR affiliate, and I used to have a local show there called "Here Comes the Sun."
Yeah.
And you remember that?
I'm trying not to state that yet. You know, I'm trying to be on the down low here.
Well, you know, I understand that. But I so I was doing a radio show, and I was, you know, we would interview people, and there was a woman named Naima Washington whose husband was one of the Attica members of the Attica in prison. And so she had the film, and she was trying to get it around the country. And so she came to our radio show, Here Comes the Sun, and we interviewed her, and she talked about the film. And then I talked to Mr. Nance about bringing the film out to City College. And so that's kind of how that happened. And I think I got credit for it or something. I had gone through 2 regular semesters of African history. And then the last semester, I worked out with Glenn Nance. I worked out with him to do an independent study. And in that independent study,
careful, you're moving too much. You're starting to break up.
Involved in cultural activities, like, you know, I was doing plays. I just started doing cultural stuff and artistic stuff and political stuff. And I think it was after that was when Glenn asked me to run the political organization. But I had no aspirations for that because I realized I know that I would do a great job at it, but that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a political animal. I
Yeah.
wanted to be who I am, but be able
be
to
conscious.
Yeah. And not have to be tied to an organization where you had to deal with people and egos and all this other kind of stuff. So I declined the offer to run the organization.
Good point.
And decided to just, continue to do the work, bringing films out there, doing progressive theater. For me, that was my way of making a contribution. I mean, everybody got a different way, and everybody has different skills for different things, But for me, art has always been the way that I've been able to express myself in many different ways, politically, spiritually, and otherwise. It's through the arts. It's not through politics, for me.
Yeah. Why would you say that music has played such a big part in your life? Or still does?
Oh my goodness. Oh, without a question. I mean, I think that
you're moving quite a bit, so you're breaking a little bit.
Music has been and influenced me greatly, probably even more than actors and acting.
Yeah.
I've always loved just what music can do to a person, can do to a personality, can do to a spirit. Music is a very powerful collection of universal notes and tones. It's they ring out in the universe, and not just notes on a piano or a guitar or a trumpet. They are part of the universal continuum that all of us human beings are a part of. And for me, I can list musical influences that are as strong as anything in terms of being an actor. I mean, people like Bob Marley, influenced me. Gil Scott-Heron, these people have influenced me in ways that I'm not even sure I understand. Cuban musicians, Chucho Valdez, people like that, man, they are with me all the time, and I'm not confined to just a certain genre. I like everything. I like it all, and a good friend of mine and yours too once said a great
now you're going to expose me.
He said well, the guy too.
Go ahead. We can expose now.
Somebody was saying, but we'll save it for a little later. But the thing is, he said to me, this gentleman, Muziki Robertson, he said, somebody said, well, do you like that kind of music? I don't like that kind of music. And Muziki said, well, I don't know. I think there's only two kinds of music.
Yes.
And he said, what? He said, music that's well performed and music that's not.
And go back to the old school.
The only kinds of music
good and bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, just because I don't like a certain genre of music don't mean that it's not good. It just doesn't speak to me in the same way.
No.
I know lyrically, the words of certain country and western songs, man, they move me tremendously.
Yes.
And I think that, like I said, music is a universal thing, man. It comes from, existing in this realm that we exist in. And it finds its way into our hearts, into our feet, and it moves us. And I think for me, music has been a very, very big news. John Coltrane has had a tremendous effect on me as an artist. I mean, Coltrane was the first artist.
Remember they had a church?
Yes, One Mind Temple.
Yeah, remember
Sri
the
Rama
Coltrane Church? Yeah,
that's right. Now on the Visadero.
Yeah,
I think it's still there.
Awesome.
I'm not sure, but I think it's still
I'll have to ask the old school posse, and because I've talked to everybody quite often from home, so I can.
Oh, good.
I can get some. Yeah. Oh, often. So I would say probably what's
Yeah.
motivating you lately in this really intense time? What's keeping you motivated?
Well, probably fatherhood, man. You know, I think fatherhood has kicked my life into a whole nother gear, man. And it motivates me in many ways. I mean, it motivates me to make sure that I'm employed, and it motivates me in that way. But it's also motivated me to even find better employment than I've ever had. You know,
Yes,
since my son has been born and he's 13 now,
I did see him in the
the
video.
opportunity.
I saw him in
Oh
your
yeah,
video with when you were talking to Robert. He popped up from behind the chair.
he video bombed me. Yeah, right to me.
Yeah, I saw him. He popped up slowly. I was like, okay, there's that sense of humor.
He's a nutcase.
Yeah,
But he just turned 13, and you know, since his birth, man, the greatest work I've ever done has taken place. I mean, um, collectively, the greatest work. You know, I think that, and it motivates you in a subconscious way. It's not motivating you where it's always at the forefront of your brain, but it's motivating you because it's always there. It's always with you. You're always, you know, you go somewhere and you go, oh yeah, you know what? Let me see. I should bring Miles something, or
yeah,
you know, I should. Oh, he would like this. Oh wow, you know, and he is a great motivator. He's a motivator in terms of just personal discipline as a human being, because they bring out all the challenges and all the how would you say, all the chinks in your armor. They bring it
yeah.
all out. They confront it. You have to face it and you have to deal with it. And sometimes it's painful. And but it's right now it's kind of like the big motivator for me, having a 13-year-old. You
Awesome.
know.
So, most people don't know probably some of your earlier background. You know, people hear about a little bit of the film and smaller things that they hear about. You know, they don't really know much about your history coming up in San Francisco doing smaller plays and also being part of the mime troupe.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's my artistic career started in San Francisco, and I'm a product of San Francisco. You know, both artistically and in many other ways. You know, growing up at the time I grew up in the '60s, San Francisco was sort of the hub of the counterculture of America. You know.
Yeah.
Um, where a lot of political activity went on, a lot of experimentation went on, a lot of things happened, a lot of music. It was an extraordinary time to grow up in, and the Vietnam War was happening,
Yes.
and I think all those things in growing in that city definitely created the person that stands before you. I mean, we used to live in the Haight-Ashbury. And I think we moved out of the Haight-Ashbury, probably in the mid '60s. But we moved out just before the craziness happened, where the streets were blocked off and traffic couldn't drive down Haight Street between Waller and Stanton, between Masonic and Stanton. It was a
Yes.
walking street, you know, for that long distance. And it was packed. It was like the movies of Wall Street you see, where people are elbow to elbow. And it was an amazing time. I mean, the Vietnam War was a looming thing for me because I remember being a graduate from high school in 1972, and that was the year that they ended the draft.
Ah,
But I remember, you know, being in the 10th or 11th grade, thinking, "Oh my God, I don't get drafted," you know.
yeah. Because it's something definitely,
Oh,
you know, the political stuff you spoke of, it sound like definitely something you truly didn't believe in.
not at all. And, we have to credit our dad for saying to me when I was 10 or 11 years old, he said to me, there's a war going on in a place called Vietnam. And if you get drafted, you're not going. And he had one of those big monkey wrenches. And he took the monkey wrench and he said, if you even think about trying to go, I will take this monkey wrench and I will break your leg. And my thought was, Vietnam, that sounds familiar. I was in the 6th grade,
Wow.
Simone. And by the time I got to be a senior in high school, that war was still going on. And there was a real jeopardy of folks like myself getting drafted, I remember this, man. I remember Pops, man, ZA was pretty conservative in many ways. Because I remember when Muhammad Ali fought, another great influence on me, Muhammad Ali. When Muhammad Ali fought Sonny Liston, he was a fan of Sonny Liston. And he called Muhammad Ali, he was known as Cassius Clay at the time, he called him the Big Mouth. People called him the Louisville Lip. And he didn't have any faith in him as a fighter or anything. He was just some kind of big mouth braggadocio. However, when that fight happened, and then he announced afterwards that he changed his name to Muhammad Ali. He was a member of the Nation of Islam. And then later on, when Ali refused to go to Vietnam as a conscientious objector, he not only became my hero, but he became Pops' hero too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he was saying, it's something I don't believe in, and why would I be going over there? Because I don't even know anything about these people. And that's the thing. It's it's really scary when politically people just get fed these things and they just go, I hate this person or I hate that person, but they don't even know anything about them. You've never even met them or been to that country to even go, I'm gonna have this insight about this person that I know nothing about. You've only fed me these tidbits of information, but I'm going to grasp onto them and build this big idea.
Oh my God. It's really sick and sad. I mean, because of living through Vietnam, which was a bright, shining lie, living through that, it has given me the ability to have transparency. I can see through a lot of bullshit.
Yes.
And I remember very, very strongly when the war in Iraq hadn't started yet.
Yeah.
And I was in New York, and it was Valentine's Day. I want to say of 2004.
Yeah.
And it was freezing. But what I remember most was there was a global march against the war that hadn't happened yet. Around the world, something like 14 million people marched against the U.S. invading or going into Iraq. And the president and the administration, they were saying, things like, hey, we got to get over there because they got weapons of mass destruction. And before you know it, that we're going to be looking at a mushroom cloud. And growing up in Vietnam and understanding the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which supposedly was the thing that got us into the war, it was itself a lie and fake and never happened. I had known that. And I was at the gym and I was talking to this young brother who works at the gym, one of the managers.
Yes.
And this was months later when there was no weapons of mass destruction ever found.
No.
And the young brother was so disappointed. And I said, what's wrong, man? He said, man, there's nothing there. He said, what do you mean? I said, there's nothing there. There's nothing ever there. And if there was anything there, it was stuff we sold them or gave them. So, no, there's nothing there. This is another bright, shining lie to get us into, a conflict for our own benefits. Oil.
Yeah, the world
and
police stuff.
regional supremacy. We, so we have to create this narrative that says that this whole group of people are crazy us against those crazy people. And I remember this kid, he was so distraught behind them not finding weapons of mass destruction. And I said, well, he said, you don't seem to be too upset by it, man. I said, I already knew there was none. You're going to tell me that when you are sitting watching TV and you see the president come on the television and say there's weapons of mass destruction, you're going to tell me that you didn't believe it? I said, it was George W. Bush saying it. Of course I didn't believe it.
And the idea is, if you ate it up that bad, the poor guy, and he's, giving his life into that and waiting for something, it's someone can feed him just about anything and he's going to believe it.
Anything. This kid had been in Afghanistan. And then
He had been into military before.
Yeah. He said when that thing first started, he's talking about Iraq. He says, I wanted to go, man. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, he explained to me why. He says, well, you over there, man, you got night vision goggles, you got laser weapons, you got flak jackets, you got helmets. He said, man, you feel invincible.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? You know what? I understand that. Because the Romans felt invincible too.
Yeah.
Where are they now?
They left some nice architecture.
Yeah, and in Northern Italy, they make some beautiful clothing and shoes.
Yeah.
But a world power, they are not,
So what would you say some of the greatest influences from San Francisco from that period that have stuck with you artistically? What would you say, like, even if it's music, paintings, arts, just the overall city as an energy?
Well, the thing, one of the big things that influenced me most was definitely my mom. She's an artistic person, and she had a love and admiration and a skill as a dancer and a choreographer. And my first idea of being around hard work in the arts was with her, because she would rehearse during the weeks, and on weekends they would have performances. So we were there. There was no such thing as childcare back in those days. You'd go to rehearsal with your mother every day.
Yes.
That's the way it was. And for me, that was the first sort of opening for me about what the theater was. It was very committed, talented, serious people who enjoyed what they did, but worked really hard. And so for me, acting was viewed by me as a part of the work that I witnessed growing up, the collaborative things. I mean, Mom used to do dance.
You're breaking up.
Recitals.
I think you're moving too much.
My aunt, he would do the costumes, and there was all these people involved in making this event happen.
Yes.
Oh, what about now?
There you go.
How about now?
That's better.
Absolutely. So I first found out about hard work in the theater from my mother. And so when the hard work started, it was no big deal. It's nothing, It's like, it's what you do. And I think that influenced me, but one big thing influenced me in terms of music was I had access to a great thing where, as a teenager, I got a chance to work on a summer program, and the summer program, you're assigned to different work Kezar Stadium to work for Bill Graham. And so my first show that I got to see was Led Zeppelin.
Which is a really, really famous recording. And, you know, when I hear people, you know, play that or talk about it, and I try to, you know, tell them a little bit about the history, and they just look at me very bizarre. And I'm going, do you really understand? You look at it as a myth to you, but it's something that was, okay, now expose it, that I experienced through you guys coming up. You know, hearing you play these things and talk about these things, and mom playing something, and, you know, just every room was alive with some sort of piece of art. And those kind of things, I was influenced from the get-go to accept them as part of the fabric. And when you tell someone, you going, yeah, they go, yeah, this recording, you go, you really understand the depth of what, you know, that time and period, and those people in those particular locations, and, you know, who they are, their history. And I witnessed a bit of history.
Man, we were in a place in the city of San Francisco, which American history had a very particular thing happen in that region. The Berkeley free speech movement happened there. The Black Panthers happened there. The Haight-Ashbury happened there. There were so many progressive things happening in this little one environment, man. It was an extraordinary time to be alive, you know.
Yeah, and, you know, coming up and actually moving here and being able to tell people, do you know, I don't just, you know, when people say they're from San Francisco, they're claiming the Bay Area, somewhere in the South Bay. And I'm going, no, I grew up in San Francisco proper. I was in the melting pot of, when people say, you know, here, they'll look around and go, oh, it's really culturally diverse. And, you know, it's multicultural. You're not used to this. I'm going, what? I said, I grew up in the melting pot. So, you know, I look at that and look at, you know, all the stuff you guys went through and all that. And it's such a great thing to hear. Still see those things being brushed up now. Wow, we're losing connection pretty bad there.
Oh man, I really am thankful for just the way my life unfolded, you know. I'm very thankful, and where it unfolded, you know. I'm very, very thankful, man.
So you wouldn't live there now, though, I'm sure.
No, it's not the same city anymore. It doesn't even appeal to me to live there anymore. You know, even if I did move there, I would move to another part of the Bay Area, not San Francisco.
Yeah.
You know, not at all. Berkeley or, you know, El Cerrito, places like that are really nice. Even parts of Richmond now, but parts of Oakland, the Bay Area does not hold what it used to hold for me.
So what was it like for you to jump back? What was it like for you to work in New Orleans and go back and experience that for a good period of time when you went and did the play?
Oh, it was great. I mean, I had been there several times to do film, TV stuff.
Which I had saw that television show that was there for a little bit. I was watching it just because I wanted to see, I guess, just see you in New Orleans.
Yeah, I worked on NCIS New Orleans.
Yeah.
I worked on a couple of movies there. There's a Hallmark movie I worked on there called Every Sunday or something. And then there was a movie I worked on with a very kind of low budget independent film with Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, Val Kilmer, and Sharon Stone.
No, I
Uh,
don't know that one.
it's independent, low budget. It's called Streets of Blood.
Okay.
And, I did something else there, which it's not coming to mind at the moment. But I've done a few things, from the TV stuff things. But in 2018, I went back to do a play, and not just a play, but a play about the great Louis Armstrong, and called
Yes.
Satchmo at the Waldorf by Terry Teachout. And it was an extraordinary experience, not just because the play is so phenomenal, but because I was in the skin of a character, of a human being that walked those same streets, that
Yeah.
lived that he walked the same streets. And I believe that even today, his spirit permeates that city. His spirit is everywhere in the city. And it's not just everywhere in an ethereal sense, but even in a practical sense, because the music that is being played, which we call jazz, or aspects of it, is a music that he was one of the early people to play. This music that evolved into what we know as jazz. And that is, I think, among the top 3 most important cultural things to ever happen in the 20th century.
But it's funny because a lot of people don't realize.
Birth
I
of
think a lot of people
Louis
don't realize the depth of him as well, though.
I didn't, to be completely honest with you. Until I started working on that play, I had no idea, Simone, even being a jazz fan, because when I was growing up, Louis Armstrong wasn't playing jazz anymore,
It was the show thing.
except for a solo on something, but he was playing show tunes. He was playing Hello Dolly. I mean, he was playing stuff that wasn't jazz. And it's a really incredible story behind that. His manager, Joe Glazer, told him many years ago, he says, you know what, man? You're blowing your brains out there, trying to hit all them damn high C's. Man, nobody wants to hear that. Put the trumpet down, man. Your voice is where the money is, Louis. That voice of yours, you're an entertainer.
Yeah.
You're like Al Jolson. You're like Sophie Cotton. You are an entertainer. He says, Louis, you listen to me, you won't ever have to play the trumpet again. Now, of course, Louis loved playing the trumpet.
Yes.
But, he was telling him, I have a way for you to make a whole lot more money, cross over, and you don't have to work as hard. Blowing your goddamn brains out, playing all them high C's. Come on.
And, knowing that's something he probably worked his life to be able to do.
Yes. He was a virtuoso talent like none other. And there's one of his tunes, man, that I listen to it all the time now. Just, and I didn't even know the tune before I did the play. I wasn't a Louis Armstrong fan, or particularly one that knew much about his life. And once I delved into the humanity of this person and the music and the enormous virtuoso talent, I thought, wow, I've been sleeping on Mr. Armstrong here. He's bad.
Yeah.
I missed it. And so the things I found out about him were amazing, and how his life shifted. I mean, think about it. Louis was born in 1900.
Yeah.
So and he died in 1970.
Pretty deep. Yeah.
And I think he might have even been born in 1901. But he basically, when he was born, there was no such thing as jazz.
No.
By the time he died, people were saying that jazz was dying. So he went through the whole arc before it was born, when it was popular, when it was very popular, and when it started to decline.
Yeah.
So he lived the 20th century. He lived 70 years of the 20th century. From
But
the
it's cool because
beginning
he got to see, you know, a
until
very big part of it.
1970. That, yes, he did. Yes, he did. And, you know, the thing that impressed me most about him wasn't his skill as a player, but his kindness. And they're outstanding, Simone. His humanity is outstanding. And those are the things that I found most interesting about Lewis. You know, the chronological years, the mob was fighting over him, control of him, you
Yes.
know? Dutch Schultz had a club in Harlem, and fired Lewis and his band. And then Lewis goes to Chicago, and his record starts selling. He starts making money. Dutch children, Connie says, "Hey, get him back here." So, you know, they sent a hitman backstage at the club he was playing to tell him that he's going to be playing in New York tomorrow night. And so Lewis's story is a story of courage, and it's a story of race, and it's a story of just the triumph of the will of kindness, man. He was a beautifully kind, generous man, and that was his legacy. And anybody who knew him, that's what they said, you know. He used to live in this little neighborhood in Queens called Corona, oddly enough.
Yeah.
And in Corona, Dizzy Gillespie lived like around the corner, and a couple other jazz musicians lived by, but it is a regular kind of working class neighborhood. Simone, it's nothing special. He had a really nice house, but it was just a regular neighborhood in Queens, you know? And that's what impressed me so much about him, the modesty, the, you know, the kindness and the gentleness of spirit, and how a man of his great talent had to get a gangster to protect him so he'd be able to play his art.